Hi, I'm Steve Bozart, and I'm going to walk you through the process of rebuilding a PD44. First, you want to remove the front and back connecting plates from the valve. This particular valve is operated with a linear transducer. After you remove the two connecting plates, you'll want to take off the two plastic finger safe guards on the sides. Then you'll want to disconnect the wiring from the linear transducer itself. To disconnect from your metering rods, you want to slide the slide plate on the connecting block forward, loosen the two set screws on the top of the connecting block, and gently lift the drive off the valve. To rebuild the wetted section of the valve, first you want to remove the two material inlet blocks on the side of the valve. And you want to come up to the top and you want to take the 4 screws out of the oil cup block. This will allow you to remove the metering rods. And just simply pull the metering tube out. You want to be sure that you keep your left side, your right side separate so that you're sure to put them back in on the proper side. And then with a O-ring pick, there's white wafers out of the bottom of the metering chamber. And you want to remove the air cylinders from the front and back. To remove those, you want to remove the 2 screws that are not in the counter bores. This will allow you to remove the air cylinder and the seal block. After you've removed the seal blocks and the air cylinders, you'll want to remove your spools. To do that, you'll want to use a small screwdriver and go from the back and push on the sleeve towards the front of the main body. The front is considered the side that has the serial number plate on it. Again, you want to make sure that you keep the left hand and the right hand side separate. And you'll want to turn the body upside down and remove the 2 screws and take the nose off. And to disassemble your air cylinder and seal block, you want to remove the last two screws out of the back side of this seal block, or the air cylinder block. So we'll remove your air cylinder and your piston. And then you want to remove the seal assemblies by pushing from the back side with a small screwdriver again to remove the seal cartridges and seal retainers out of the seal block. Side, you just want to do the same thing. Then you want to remove all the O-rings out of the seal cartridges using an O-ring pick. Or if you don't have an O-ring pick, a small screwdriver will usually help get these out also. You also want to remove the seals out of the inside of them. Do the same thing again on the other seal block. And you can go ahead and discard all those O-rings and seals.
Hello, my name is Dan Phillips. I work in technical service. We're here to show you a few, when you disassemble the valve, a few of the worn items and indicators to look for so that you know your spools or metering rods are worn. Okay, here we have the posi-dot body with the spool assemblies and the metering rod. When you disassemble the valve, there's a couple of things you're going to be looking for on the metering or the spool assemblies. You'll be looking for a worn finish, such as we have here. The spool should be a nice clean finish as shown on the outer end of the rod. If you see any wear like this, where it's discolored, or a scratched finish, any scratch you can feel with your finger, the spool assembly is bad. Also, if the rod is shiny, is polished here, but you can put it down on the paper and you feel end movement, the spool would be worn. The tolerance on this is a 2/10,000ths of an inch fit, so literally in a brand new rod assembly you would see no movement whatsoever. So if you feel movement here, this assembly would be worn and need replaced. On the low viscosity version, which has a smaller spool, there's normally not much wear on the spool, but it is a very small spool. So your big concern here is if it's been apart many times, such as this one has, you can see they begin to bend. And if you roll it on a flat surface, you can actually see the end of the rod move up and down. If that is the case, this part would need replaced. The rest of the parts are still good. You would just need to order a replacement spool. In the case of a metering rods are the same way as the spools. You have a nice clean finish on the rod. Should be no rust or corrosion, no scratches. Again, when it's in the metering tube, there should be no movement whatsoever. It should be a nice tight fit and a very smooth movement. If you see the metering rod and you have movement as such, and it moves up and down, that's only a few thousandths movement, but that opens up the gap inside and allows for pressure to come up against the seal and cause undue wear on the seal. So in this case, with the movement you would see here, we would consider that assembly worn and need replacement.
Now, to rebuild your high viscosity spools, you want to remove the 4 quad O-rings off the outside of the sleeve using a O-ring pick. There again, if you don't have an O-ring pick, a small screwdriver will always work. And you want to install the 4 new quad O-rings on it. In doing so, just roll them down into the groove, but you want to watch to make sure that they're not rolled inside the groove to where you would cut them, putting the sleeves into the valve. You can use a small screwdriver to rotate it around. And you want to lubricate these O-rings with a small amount of krytox grease, which is given to you in your seal kit. Now, to install these spools, you'll notice there's a cutout on the sleeve. On the left-hand side, the cutout is shallow and wide. The main body is marked L and R. You just want to line that cutout up the dowel pin in the body. And those are set for different sizes to keep your left and right hand sides straight. And you just slowly want to push that back in, trying to keep it aligned straight. And then you want to look in all your holes to make sure there's no O-ring pieces inside where the O-ring has been cut. Then on a low viscosity sleeve, spool and sleeve, you want to pull your spool out of the sleeve, and you'll find a series of seals and spacers inside that you need to take out, and you can use something to just push those out, or an O-ring pick and take them out individually. Again, you want to remove the 4 quad O-rings off the outside of the sleeve. While putting these together, you always want to be sure to refer to your assembly drawings for proper seal orientation. And if you can remember that the spring or O-ring in the seals will always face the material, will help you. Now, to rebuild this, you want to install the seals and spacers on the inside. You want to apply a small amount of krytox on all of the seals. And once again, the krytox grease is supplied in the seal kits. The O-rings in these seals will always face your spacers. You want to install your first O-ring, then one of the stainless steel spacers, another seal facing that spacer, then your next seal will go back to back with the spring again facing the next spacer. And you want to use your cartridge retainer to push those in to the proper position. Then you'll want to take and install the 4 quad O-rings. Once again, you want to watch so that you get those set so that you won't tear them as you install the sleeve into the main body. You want to use your cartridge retainer from the seal block. You want to apply a small dab of krytox to the end of your spool and insert that into the sleeve through the series of seals and spacers. A small amount of krytox on the outer O-rings again. And this will allow you to install the right hand sleeve to the main body. The dowel pin in the main body is a little bit smaller and protrudes further into the main body. The groove on the sleeve is deeper and narrower. Once again, you want to go install it kind of slow, just kind of sliding each O-ring past or into the body and looking in each of the orifices to see if there's been any damage done to O-rings. To rebuild the seal block, what you want to do is make sure that you've got your seal blocks oriented properly for O-ring orientation, and if you have a high viscosity material on one side and a low viscosity on the other, that you're putting the proper side together for each one. On the low viscosity side, you'll have a cartridge that looks like this with a piece that comes out and will go up into the sleeve. There's an O-ring, goes here, an O-ring around the outside, a small O-ring in the back, and then a larger O-ring on the outside of the back. You also have a small spacer washer that will drop into the seal or the seal block on both sides, and watch to make sure that you put the proper one on the proper side for the size of the diameter size of the rod. You can drop the O-ring for the back into there. Apply a small amount of krytox again to the O-rings. And insert it high viscosity side. You'll have a cartridge like this one. There is a seal goes in. Once again, you want to apply a small amount of krytox on it and pay special attention to your assembly drawings for proper seal orientation. And the seal will face the main or the spring in the seal will face the main body. There's also an O-ring goes around the outside of that one. Another O-ring that gets inserted into the back. And another O-ring which will drop down into the seal block itself. Apply a small amount of krytox to your O-rings. And carefully insert into the seal block. There's also a seal retainer that has an O-ring goes around the outside diameter and one goes into the center. The center O-ring is sometimes easier to just install onto the rod of the spool. Then you can install your seal block by just pressing the spools up through the seals. Stop. Do the same thing with the back. With the other side, this one I have the seal or this air cylinder already rebuilt on. We'll go through that in just a second. To rebuild the air cylinder part of this, you have a U-cup wiper on the piston itself. You can remove that with either a small screwdriver or an O-ring pick. There's also an O-ring in the outer block of the air cylinder. That can be removed with an O-ring pick or a seal block or a small screwdriver also. To rebuild that area, you just want to install your U-cup wiper onto the piston. Make sure there's no rolls in it. You want to watch on your air cylinder. The one side is chamfered. That side will go against your air inlet block. And you want the open side of the wiper to face the air inlet block. And just insert it like that. The O-ring on the block, what you need, it's a little bit small, so what you need to do is kind of hold it in two places and stretch it around. If you try to roll it, it'll just come back out. You can install your piston and air cylinder to that block. And then they will install on the seal block with the two shorter screws that go through the holes with the counter bore in them. You want to tighten those. You also want to pay attention to watch so that you have the yellow cap for your air on the side of the main body where the serial number plate is, and the green one to the back. Then you'll use the two longer screws in the holes that aren't counterbored, and those will go through into the main body and tighten your seal block and your air cylinder to the main body of the valve. Okay. Now to do your material inlet blocks, there's only an O-ring in those. You want to pay attention so that you do get them on the proper side. The one with the yellow stripe on it will go on the right-hand side of the valve. The one with the red stripe will go on the left-hand side of the valve. You just want to remove the O-ring from those. You can watch your assembly drawings again there to make sure you're using the proper O-ring. And you just install that with a small amount of krytox on it. You have to watch so that you align the material inlet hole with the material inlet hole of the block. And the same with the other side. That time. Next, you want to install the nose of the body of the valve. To do that, you just stand your valve up on end. You want to remove the two O-rings from the bottom of the nose and install new ones with a small dab of krytox on each side. Pay special attention to your O-ring orientation and your assembly drawings again for this. Now to rebuild your metering rods, there's a black bearing on the top. You want to remove that. You want to remove the O-ring off the top of the metering chamber and pull your metering rod out of the metering chamber. Now you have to pay special attention to make sure you keep the metering rod with the tube, because those are ground for an exact fit with each part. And you want to take the O-ring up out of the metering tube. You can use a pick or a small screwdriver again for that. To replace the seal, once again, you want to use a small amount of krytox on it, paying special attention to your assembly drawings again to make sure that you're using the right seal and putting it in the proper direction. And also the spring will once again face the material, so it will go down when you put it into the tube. And you just want to work that around and press it down in. And then you want to put your O-ring back on the outside of the tube with a small amount of krytox again around that. You want to insert your metering rod down through and bring it all the way down through, and you can look to make sure that you didn't cut your seal at all. Place the bearing on the top and do the same for the other one. This particular valve that we're rebuilding here, the right hand side tube is made of plastic because the material has some fillers in it, but the assembly process is the same. After you've rebuilt your two metering rods, you want to install the two white wafer discs into the bottom of the metering chamber in the main bodies. Make sure those are laying flat. You just want to drop your metering tube down in on both sides. There again, you want to pay attention to your assembly drawings to make sure that you put them on the proper side. Then you want to take your oil cup retaining block and set it down on. You just want to install your oil cup retaining block down over the seals or the O-rings and install the 4 screws that hold that in place. Now to reinstall your drive, you want to hold the 2 guide rods, slip those into the holes in the top of the oil cup block, drop everything on, install one of your connecting plates, you want to make sure that your guide or your metering rods are in the cutouts in the connecting block. Retighten your 2 set screws. Install your other connecting plate. Hook your linear transducer wiring back up and reinstall the 2 plastic finger safeguards. And there you've completed your PD44 with the linear transducer.